The Americans with Disabilities Act was passed 32 years ago, yet about 900 transit stations around the U.S. are still not in compliance. More are in New York than anywhere else.
The system is well over 100 years old, and elevators are still a relatively new phenomenon in the system. That's pretty unconscionable.
Just 27% of the Metropolitan Transportation Authority's 472 stations have elevators or ramps, forcing many people with disabilities to find other ways to get around. With each station upgrade costing $79 million on average, the MTA says it will take decades to make the entire system accessible.
The biggest holdback is the funding sources and the amount of funding that's available. So if there were more money, we'd see more projects.
Now the MTA will get a helping hand from the federal infrastructure law that passed last year. It contains $1.75 billion to make stations compliant with the Disabilities Act. The first $343 million is now being released.
We're excited to have a whole new program, not just growing funding in an existing program, but something entirely new to help their riders.
Secretary Pete Buttigieg tells Spectrum News the money should motivate New York, Boston, and other cities with older transit systems to begin upgrades that might have been deferred because of other needs.
It's one thing to encourage or persuade or push an agency to become more accessible. What we're doing now is we're funding agencies to become more accessible.
The MTA agreed under a legal settlement to make 95% of stations accessible, but not until 2055. So the new federal money is just one piece of the funding puzzle, but it could speed up the timeline. Senator Tammy Duckworth, who uses a wheelchair, pushed to include the accessibility funds in the infrastructure bill, but her initial ask was pared back in the final negotiations.
I'm still going after the full $10 billion in order to truly make all of our transit systems across the country accessible. This is a good start, right? You got to start somewhere, and this is a good start.
Buttigieg says the station upgrades could ultimately help everyone.
Anyone who has ever pushed a stroller, pulled a rollerboard suitcase, anybody who ever reflects on the fact that we all could age into disability sooner or later should be supportive of these efforts.
In Washington, Austin Landis, Spectrum News.